Welcome to the Whiteknuckle Podcast with your hosts, Jason Science and Dr. Clint McCoy.
Hey, what's up, everybody? Welcome back to the Whiteknuckle Podcast. This is episode number, I don't know, because there's been so many lately. Tonight, I am not joined by my co-host, Clint McCoy, because he is helping his mom and dad down in southern Illinois deal with all this water that we're getting. Tonight, I've got a guest in that we haven't had on as a guest. He's been a co-host before, but he's actually the president, CEO, commander-in-chief of UC Hunting Properties, and that's Mr. Travis Hamele. Travis, how's it going?
Janitor.
And the janitor. How's it going?
Good.
Well, we got together tonight because
Free pizza.
Or free pizza, right. It's been long overdue. We formed a partnership earlier this year. I work for you. That's not a secret to anybody. We've been talking about forming a partnership absent me working for you for a while. You and Todd got to know each other through the different trade shows, so you're not a stranger to Whiteknuckle at all. I guess tell me, first of all, what value you saw in us, just so I can feel good about myself and Whiteknuckle, and then we'll get into UC Hunting Properties.
Well, I mean, it comes back to everything that we believe in, too. I mean, we believe in stewards of the land. Whiteknuckle has been a steward of the bow hunting industry, been a steward of public hunting, hunting grounds, MFL hunting grounds. And it's true to the roots of why we do what we do, why people own land, why the government, the state purchases land, so we have a place to hunt. Everybody has their own desire on how they want, to be a hunter, where they want to hunt. And, some people want their own little slice of heaven, paradise. Some people want to just pack in the day of and climb in a tree and, just years of going into this public hunting ground, they know that during November 1st through the 7th, they have the best opportunity. They know that from hunting that. And that's just cool to hear those stories. And, Todd, his passion behind it always kind of got me cranked up and wanted to see what was next every year. So.
Well, speaking of Todd, we're going to do our shed hunt in light of everything that's going on with this whole coronavirus thing. We're going to do our shed hunt over the next 3 days. We did have to limit it to just a couple people, but we're looking forward to that. Hopefully the sun shines here. We've had enough rain in the last day.
Well, like I told you this morning, if you guys are less than 6 feet apart, you're not shed hunting properly.
True. I hope so deviantly it was a really good idea on my part to have this shed hunt because number one, we wanted to do it to I guess to honor Todd and in remembrance of Todd, and then I guess the part that I liked the most was that we were doing it on my ground, on the ground that I hunt. So I'm not very good at finding sheds, so hopefully the rest of these guys are the guys that I've got coming in are definitely some shed masters. So hopefully we uncover some of the big ones that we've had running around. Speaking of big ones, tell me about the big ones that were on your property this year and what happened with at least a couple of them.
Well, I got a few of them, but I didn't fill my tag. Throughout the year, earlier in the season, we were out hanging cameras and checking cameras during Velvet, and actually two of the 3 deer that we ended up finding dead on our property were those ones that were in the, corn when the corn was just, knee high.
Right.
and in velvet, and I mean they were beautiful sitting there. And I mean one I just haven't scored it because it's kind of was devastating to find them the day we weren't even shed hunting. We were just looking at a timber cut that we're going to be doing and seeing where it's going to come through. And I knew it was his bedroom, so I was like, well, I mean, we can kind of kill two birds with one stone and maybe find his sheds and find out, where we're going to cut the timber. And cresting that hill, which, earlier in the year was a very memorable place because that's where, Philip Culpepper and I shot my turkey that was, scooting him all morning behind the house, and he couldn't get to it. So we went on the backside of it, and I ended up shooting it in the same spot where we found the deer. And, it was a deer that we chased all year long. It's for a bunch of different reasons. We never named the deer until we found it, and the name Karma just kind of stuck with it, and that's a story for another day.
Right.
But then it was yesterday. The day before, I got a call from one of the my neighboring landowners and said that EC3 was out at his farm doing some environmental stuff. They're going to do some mowing and things like that, and then Eric from EC3 got a hold of me through, my other buddy, and said, in one of your ditches, we see a deer, we've seen some antlers sticking up. So, I run out there yesterday now and seen the thing sitting there. And I mean, I sent the picture to my brother. I mean, we knew exactly where that deer was crossing, and I think it was a car kill just because he was always across the road, and everybody would always call me and say this deer was, crossing. I mean, he was kind of a showman. He showed himself off to maybe too many people, but and then we had another one that we ended up finding in our cornfield when the corn finally came off this year. I mean, I've never had a rifle season that I can remember with corn standing everywhere.
Yeah.
It was just crazy. And it was a nice 13-pointer. It was, one of the bucks that I put Blanton on when he was up here hunting that one morning, and with no avail, but that story ended up awesome also. So it, so finding those three deer that, I mean, one of them was the one that, I mean, he was a shooter. I mean, he was probably in the 70s. And, the other two were a year out from being harvestable, for what we got set up on our farm for quality deer management and things like that. And I don't know what this year will bring. I mean, we had some other good 3.5-year-olds running around that, we'll see what happens.
You got a good network of neighbors out there.
Oh, absolutely. That's a good thing. But, the main thing is, and, that's why, with the Whiteknuckle Partnership and the people I know inside of it, we share things. Our neighbors and I'm not afraid to tell them I'm, hunting this deer, or we got this deer, and, then they send it back. And, I mean, you can kind of pattern the deer a lot better. I mean, you never figure out a big buck's pattern. If you ever look at all the 200-inch deer that have been shot, once that thing is shot on all the areas that thing is during the year when you don't know where he's at and how far away he is, if everybody just talked, I mean, that's probably why we, don't talk as much as we do, is you can pin those things down a lot quicker.
Right.
And, we just got a good group of neighbors that, we're all after the same thing, and
sure,
and have a good time. So.
I think that's the thing you're all after,
right?
Is to have a good time, and I think that's the one thing that, as an industry, we don't talk about enough, and we won't spend a whole lot of time on it here tonight. But and that's having a good time. It's super important, and you guys definitely do that. Let's talk a little bit about. How did you? It's kind of a unique story. I've heard it before. I don't know how your wife survived that first day, but tell us how you actually got into real estate. We worked together at the car dealership many, many moons ago, and take it from there.
I mean, I was into, a good friend of mine, his dad, who's been like a father to me, worked in the, classic car industry with him. My dad's always been into cars. So, I mean, cars was my life. I mean, like yours was forever. And, my dad also owned the auction company. So I started helping him out on that. And I kind of developed, I got my auction license, and then I sold a house on auction. And the process, just the whole dealing with people. It was a first time home buyer, and it's that place in Rio, that I show you every time we go by. I mean, it's still memorable to this day, and I just fell in love with real estate. Always had the auctioneering in my blood, and I was selling cars, and just one day I just had enough and just said I want to chase my dream of owning a real estate company, and showed up. I think we just had a baby 8-9 months prior to this day. My wife just took a new job. She wasn't even through the orientation process yet, and I came home with a box at lunchtime and told her I quit my job, and that real estate was where we were going, and I was buying the auction business from my dad, and we're still married. It's almost 17 years. But no, it was just something I had to do. And, worked for an independent for a little while on the real estate side. Got with a major franchise with Remax for a number of years. And then I was in the NAA in 2008. I think it was 2008, somewhere around in there.
What's the NAA? Oh,
National Auctioneers Association. Okay. And ran into Sean Terrell and, the guys at United Country. And, they just kind of ran some stuff by me. And I just, went back home and ran the auction business and sold some properties at auction. And then I was down there again in 2009 and had a very good conversation with them, and next thing you know, we started United Country Hamele Auction and Realty at the time in 2010 in November, and from there it just kind of escalated, and picking up and agent here and there and getting in different markets, and then in 2012, was the year we really dove into the hunting industry. We were always selling farmland and things like that, but we really had a vision that we were going down this road to sell recreational and hunting land. I booked an auction in Columbia County. It was a land auction. It was a recreational property. We divided up into multiple tracts and did a multiple parcel auction, but
it was Cambria, wasn't it?
It was in Fall River.
Okay.
And I bought a web domain for the auction, and that web domain was UC Hunting Properties. And people were, the analytics on it for that auction were just amazing. And people are like, well, is that your guys' company? And after that, it clicked, and there's two logo designs. One that there's only a few people in the world that have probably seen it, and then the one that everybody sees now. But in my office, you can find a logo that's the old design that were on the first hats that lasted about a month, and before we switched them. And, we've tweaked the logo a little bit, but it's basically had the same look to it since 2012. And we went through 5 website changes, just getting outside of Wisconsin in 2014. We partnered up with some buddies of ours in Missouri to do some beta, just kind of test it and see how it's going to work from there. Those guys just joined United Country, Jason and Phil down there, and, it started getting traction there. Then, we went into different states inside the other United Country offices, and, then this thing started getting some legs underneath it, and it was fun along the way too. I mean, you're doing what you love to do, and that's sell ground, walk on ground, and talk hunting to people every time they call. And but you have to have a passion to do it also. I mean, because it's not as easy as just getting out of the truck and pointing to the property and say, there you go, there's your property. Now we're going to close in a week. I mean, there's so many steps in between there that, we could go on for days on this podcast and talk about. But, the land agents are geared up for the hunt for that piece of property and to find different ways to purchase that property for people, because it's not always the easiest in the world to fund property that brings you no money back except for fun, and that's mostly the recreational property. I mean, it's just like the guys on your pro staff that are out there hunting. It's they're bringing quality stuff back to you. It's no different than our land agents, bringing the quality of the pictures, the drones, the videos, setting trail cameras, just the story of the property. It just puts the whole package together. It's what America lives and breathes on, is the buying and selling land. I mean, everybody talks about homesteading. That's what you do every time you buy a piece of property. You're re-homesteading something. And, it's great to, read old plat books of way back in the 1800s when, John T. Smith and his family, homesteaded this property, and how it's been divided and added to. It's just, those things are novels that you just have to read.
Yeah, I recently read the abstract for my grandfather's farm.
Oh, when you just,
yeah.
Yep.
Well, I've had it along with there's 3 parcels to that farm, so I've got 3 abstracts. And just I want to say it was either late 1800s or early 1900s, probably, that it was homesteaded, and that first family that homesteaded it is recorded, and from there it just sort of, the story builds, and it was just fascinating to see how many times it had changed hands, and then honestly the highs and the lows. A lot of those sales were sheriff sales.
Mm-hmm.
Back in that time, and they were sold on the courthouse steps because the person that had bought it couldn't make it, because farming was all they did. So for any of you who have bought land or have access to one of those old abstracts, they're pretty cool to read.
That place I had in Kansas, in Stafford, Kansas, it was just, I didn't know any of the families and any of the history of the area, but it was just cool to read through that end of it. Because, it's Stafford, Kansas. The whole county has got 12 or 1,400 people, and, so it's not a huge, densely populated area. And just how that little piece changed hands and was added to, and, the town developed around it. And, it was just kind of cool to be in a different area and read the history of a piece of property that you had in another state.
Because there's always a story.
Absolutely. That's the thing. And some of the stories are great stories about a property and how people, take over, let's say the reins. We kind of seen that this year with a property that we sold, and, the buyer and seller are still very close. We'll be going on a hunting trip with them this year. And, that story alone is, I'm sure we're going to have that story someday brought up on this podcast.
Yeah, that'll be fun.
I just don't. Yeah, that might be a 2-part series.
I talked to John just the other day, and we'll get John on here because it's a very unique story. And it's one that maybe not all of our audience is going to be able to identify with because a certain amount of them, are public land hunters. But I think by the end of the story, they'll appreciate the story of how much trouble John went through to build himself a deer mecca is what he's done. And the amount of work that he went through is still work.
It's made it easier.
Right.
But it's still a ton of work.
So I'm always curious to find out, you mentioned real estate, particularly on the rec land side. I've learned very quickly that it is work. It's a wonderful thing that I get to do, and I'm blessed to have had the opportunity that I've had. But it is work. There's a lot of things that you need to know that, maybe the average casual observer with a cursory glance just doesn't get. There's so many different aspects to a transaction rather than, like you said, dropping them off and unloading your UTV and going for a ride and writing it up and being done. There's just a lot of questions that need to get answered. I'm just curious, how it was that you not got into the real estate business, but how you got to be so passionate about just land without even being involved in real estate. I mean, was there something that happened as a kid that got you to hunt?
I just think what I grew up on. We didn't have cell phones. I mean, I was 7-8 miles away from town. My parents worked. In the summertime, if I wanted to go to town to play with my buddies, I had a brand new Huffy in the garage. And then after about 10 years, it was no longer a brand new Huffy in the garage. It was worn out Huffy from going back and forth. But we had ponds and we had a creek and, we had a great, farm that we still own today. And it was like having a huge playground of just timber and water and fields. And I just, every time I'm on a piece of property, it kind of reminds me of my childhood. I grew up on a farm. We weren't farming at that point. My grandfather was passed away and, the farming operation was done and we were leasing the, crop ground out. But I think not having part of that initial, other than helping the neighbors out farm and things like that as a kid, not having the farm operating is why I like putting the food plots in and making the food plots bigger every year and, And
for those of you that are listening, if Travis ever invites you to help him put food plots in, don't do it. I think he thinks there's a scale of perfection that I think he holds himself to a certain level of perfection when it comes to a food plot. It's not necessarily how it grows, it's how it looks when you're done planting it, I think. Because it looks damn nice when you're done planting it. And sometimes we can't control what Mother Nature does. But one of the things that I wanted to ask that you brought up is that, just these memories from your childhood. And I think it's something that none of us think about often enough. And that's what the land gives back to you, just in terms of memories. And maybe this is getting, too deep of a subject. But, I know your family. I know particularly your dad, because he and I worked together for a lot of years, for better or worse. And that farm has given him a lot.
Yeah.
Not just a lot of memories, but he's trapped. He's made some money off of it, and I can imagine you trapped as well and coon hunted and
hunted more. We raised coon hounds out there when I was younger, and every day I had my fishing pole and I found one of the ponds or the Nina Creek or when what's the statute of limitations of driving before you were 16? I think I'm past that, right?
I think you're well past that.
Well, I mean, I would take the farm truck up to Lake Mason because, I just wanted a different fishing hole once in a while. So my dad's not on the internet, but somebody will probably tell him about that if he doesn't already know. But, it was a long ways with a bike ride. So I just had to improvise a little bit. But, just those feelings, and I think a lot of the world, and that's what the fun part of the job is, and the rewarding part of the job is setting up the next generation with a father and a family, and buying a property together because they know it's going to be handed down from generation to generation. I got this deal going on right now that it's great. I mean, this guy's purchasing 160 acres, and his son is in the military right now, and he wants to, if anything ever happens to him, he wants to hand it down to his son. That's going to be their hunting spot. That's going to be their memories, and it's just it's very rewarding just to hear all that, and you take part in it. It's what gets you up in the morning. It keeps you driving, and it's the rewarding part of the job.
Absolutely. You mentioned handing it down and things like that, and I think that one of the things that I figured out after a period of time in the business was that, especially representing the sellers as much as I do, it's not always the best price that wins. Sometimes it's the best person.
Yeah.
And I just went through that with that. I got a couple 100-acre family farm that, there was nobody to succeed on. Neither of the girls wanted to do it, and Dad's gone, and Dad had a friend, and the friend bought it, and it wasn't ever about the number. I mean, the numbers had to be right for them to do it, but it was about getting the right person, because there was, at the end of the whole thing, I think there was 4 or 5 different offers, and it wasn't about the number, it was about the person, and I think that's one of the things that I didn't really take into account. I didn't really know, and I guess there's no reason that I would, but it's cool to watch all of that take place and see how much that really means to some people. It's pretty rewarding to be able to be part of that process.
You don't buy anything and get a good deal by going in there and being a bull in the china shop and trying to tell everybody how you're going to purchase the property, because at that point, you can throw as much. I've seen people throw tons of money in front of somebody, stupid money, but it's how they treated the landowner that they didn't buy the property. And it wasn't about the price; it was about their attitude.
Right.
It's
it's kind of the same when you go and ask permission.
I was just going there. It's no different than. Because when I go to South Dakota pheasant hunting, I knock on doors. I mean, that's another thing. It's when I was in Kansas deer hunting, I knocked on people's doors. So I get the whole public hunting thing, because I've done it in other states, and I appreciate that, and the permission I've gotten, because I've got on some. I mean, the deer that hangs in my office from Kansas was shot because of permission. And it was the first time we sat in there, and a little bit of luck, But that's the whole. I mean, attitude can get you so further in life.
Oh, absolutely.
It's or it can get you so far behind in life.
Mm-hmm. So. Well, we talked a lot about land ownership, and there's a lot of people that don't think that they can own land. And I just went through a really interesting transaction with a fellow by the name of Blake that hopefully we'll be able to have on here, because he was passionate about how he was going to buy his dream whitetail farm, if you will, in southwestern Wisconsin. And we won't go into that a whole lot, but is land ownership, in your opinion, easier than what people think it is?
In different situations, yes. It's all about scaling. You don't need 1,000 acres. You might not need 500 acres. You need the right acres that financially fit your situation. It's owning too many acres and not having enough time to manage it, to keep it under control, can actually lose value down the road. So you want to be able to gain value, whether it's with timber harvests, whether it's putting in, managed forests, so your income, your outgoing expenses with taxes and everything are lowered every year. And if you can get some tillable in it, if you can get what they say, the nut to about zero of, holding cost. Of course, minus financing payments and things like that. But if you can get your holding cost to almost, net zero, and then you can look at your monthly budget of where you need to be. And if that payment will work for you, we put that, kind of in an equation, and that's what we look at for size of properties and things like that. And there's some great financing options out there. The majority of your local banks that you do your, checking accounts and everything with, they're only going to want to do 5 years. And they're not in the business as land lenders. They're in the residential, and commercial lending more than they are in the ag and recreational land. There's specific programs with different companies with inside the, farm credit services that, help our clients out and buyers out getting properties purchased for themselves. So I've had a lot of people, that said, well, I just didn't think I could afford that. But after talking with them and spreading the payments out and doing this with my house, because they have equity in their house, the numbers worked. So there's always, you got to peel back the onion. And look what's inside of it and figure out how the different ways you can get there. But there usually is a way, and then you just got to look at if it fits your budget. And but there is a lot more ways to get financing than there used to be on rec land and agricultural land.
Yeah, I'm surprised at how aggressive, particularly, Compeer has been at working with us. Their goal isn't to say no. Their goal is to say yes. And I think a lot of people have that wrong.
The guys in the northern Wisconsin, they're dealing a lot with greenstone up there. And so it's, we've had some great relationships that we've, with the lenders in the area that help us out with this. And the other thing that I like about it is they're just as passionate about the ground as we are.
I know. It was funny. This fall I had a closing with Wendy from Compeer, and she wanted to schedule it around, it was the Wednesday of the gun season, and she's like, well, I'd really like to be in my stand by whatever time it was. She said 1 o'clock, so let's try and shoot for 11. That'll give me an hour cushion one way or the other so I can make it to my stand on time. And I'm like, okay, sure, that's great. So, yeah, a lot of those folks share the same passion that we do. What's your favorite thing to hunt?
Whatever's open for season. I have, it's every year my mood changes.
Right.
If I go back to I think it's always and will be the whitetail deer, because there's so much preparation and there's just so many aspects to the whitetail before the harvest, before chasing them. I mean, getting in the pictures, putting in the food plots, shed hunting, like you're doing this. I can guarantee you, if for some reason I don't get all my chores done at the farm and I don't get over to the shed rally you guys got going on over there, I will be getting pictures of sheds and you'll be fired up to hunt there, for the next 2 months. Just, that, you'll be doing maps for food plots. That's why I'll always love the whitetail deer. Now, turkey season's coming up, and it's going to get crazy. The mornings I won't be I'll be working on a box call and a mouth call is what I'll be working on. But other than just making sure turkeys have food, I mean, you don't have to make bedding ground for turkeys. You just can't cut their beds down, I guess. I mean, is the way you look at it.
Right.
So that's, I don't know, the duck hunting and waterfowl hunting, that gets a whole different avenue with me. That's 60 days.
We had some fun this year doing that.
Yeah. I mean, but there's preparation and things like that, but you have a 60-day window.
Right.
And in Wisconsin, it's a little shortened, with cold weather and things like that. But so I look at it just, the whitetail deer is.
What's your favorite whitetail story? What's your best story, best memory?
Probably the year that I think I was a junior in high school. We used to have 15 people hunt on our farm, and just, 21 bucks hanging up opening day. And, my brother and I just convinced my dad that we had to get rid of everybody. Well, who's going to help me cut wood? Well, we volunteered for a lot of years, and then we have figured that LP is a lot better. But, we still cut wood, but it's. So,
and you still have people out there hunting.
Yeah.
It's not just you guys.
So we split away from
I haven't made it on the list yet.
Right. You got to invite. You just keep moving so much. It
I
keeps getting
know.
Lost in the mail.
We're going to do it this year, though.
But we're into it like 3 years into our QDMA program. And, this was in the early 90s. And my brother shot, my dad shot a deer. That was, it was back then in the early 90s.
Mm-hmm. That was a big deer.
Right. It was and I shot one. It's on my wall, and, everybody asked me, why'd you shoot something? That was the first opening day of the third year of our QDMA. And we drove around. My dad shot his. He was gutting his out. I was walking back to the truck and shot mine. And my brother shot his with 10 minutes left to go in the season. And it was a 13-pointer. It was probably a 4.5, 5-year-old deer. But it looks like the deer we're shooting today out there back then.
Mm-hmm.
And there's a picture, and, his deer looked a lot bigger than my dad's and mine. So it was kind of like, you see it now, you're like, a bunch of little dinks. But we drove, that's when you had the tailgate down and you drove to the gas station in town, and there was everybody there, and you talked about the hunt, and you drove around, registered in at all the buck contests, and talked about it at school for 2 weeks after that. And, that's just kind of, because my brother and I both have those deer mounted. So when I, go to his house, I see it. My dad's never mounted a deer in his life. He, puts them on little racks in his. But that's just the way he is. It's cool.
Right.
So that probably the most memorable one. Last season it was a close second when my nephew Jack shot that deer on the farm his dad just purchased. It was the first hunt on the farm, and we just got done putting the stands up 3 days prior to that. The Muddy Bulls.
We were out there in the rain.
Yeah, and just how it all came together, and that hunt, there was a ton of highs and a couple lows that were almost crushing, but they ended up turning out just wonderful. It's because of the rain. We didn't know if that deer was hit because of the water spray, but after we slowed the video down and looked, it was the water spray on the deer, not on the alfalfa. So, yep.
I remember hearing the shot. You invited me to come over and sit that night, and I was anxious to sit on that farm anyway. And I remember, you sending the video, and of course we couldn't tell from the video. And I was up there in the stand in that other muddy, just watching the video, and you called, and you guys had found it, and it was cool to be there, cool to be a part of it. Definitely a memorable experience. And then, what probably makes it even more cool is that it's not that far from where David and I filmed David Blanton shooting that buck. I think there's going to be a lot of memories that are made out on that farm.
Oh, absolutely.
That'll be, I'm sure, the source of a few podcasts. But anything else you want to add?
No, it's just if you're passionate about what you do, it's
makes it a lot easier.
It's a lot easier. We're going through some times right now, and
yikes,
the world, that there's a lot of uncertainties out there. But the thing is, I got up this morning and drank my coffee and looked over my field and watched the deer and, kind of middle and what's left of my beans that they've annihilated this year. But I don't know, that's better to me than looking at a stock portfolio or watching your stock go up and down and, almost jumping off a cliff because you can't handle it. It's right. My financial guy sent me a couple of emails, and I've deleted them all. I haven't even opened them yet because land is where I like to be. I control what happens to it. If I want to sell it, if I, what the price is I sell it at, not in, people on Wall Street. But not saying that I don't do stocks. It's just my heart is more into the land and as an investment, and not just as recreational. It's also an investment in my family's future and my future.
So tell us, before we let you go, a little bit about UC Hunting Properties. Isn't just specific to our office and in your business. It's throughout the country, right?
Correct. UC Hunting Properties is kind of set up as it's like a membership. We're all members of the greater good. We're all partners in the same goal of getting to the top and giving somebody a great experience, not only with the buying of the property, the whole experience throughout it. When they get to the website, they can find stuff, easy searching through counties. And we're everybody that's kind of lists property with UC Hunting Properties, they have to be United Country offices. It's unless you're one of the founding people, you kind of get an exception. But we've all came together. We've all helped each other grow this business because it helps each other's business as in each state. I think right now we got offices in 21 states, 20 or 21 states.
Really?
Yeah.
I didn't even know that.
And, I was just talking to a guy today that, was out in the West. When we were building the website, each state we thought about the pictures that needed to go on them. So, I mean, everything has been thought through while building this website so the people have the experience and we can, market the property for our sellers in the best experience that a buyer can have. And it's just fun. The trade shows are fun, seeing the people every time. It's, what we call the Deer and Turkey Expo now is called the Field and Stream or something like that in Madison every year. I mean, that's a lot of memories that, I can go back to when I was in high school. That's where we went to buy all our products for the year.
Do you remember when it was in the Coliseum?
Oh, yeah. It's,
we'd be begging somebody's parents to take us down there, and they suffered through it. And yeah, a lot of that stuff has changed over the years. Unfortunately, this year it's not going to happen at all.
Right, and it's sad.
It is.
It is sad because there's a lot of people in the industry that count on that. Not just to display their products, but to sell their products.
Right.
That's the venues that they sell to.
Right.
They're trade show vendors, and it's just sad for the whole industry. And hopefully, the good Lord gets everybody through this, and there's a brighter future, and everybody comes out of it okay. But it's going to sting.
It's going to hurt for a while. No doubt about that. So tell us a little bit about, or actually just tell us how we can find you if we want to. I'll leave a link in the show bio for your email. What's the website? All that good stuff.
Well, I'm glad you asked me, Jason, and you didn't do it because it's kind of like the signs and everything you make. You always have my name, but your phone number on it.
That's an honest mistake.
Copy and paste, it happens. I can totally see it happen, but once.
I'll get it right this time.
It's you can the best email to get me at is Travis at HameleAuctions.com. That's HAM, and that's M as in Mary, ELE auctions.com. It's kind of my go-to email. I got a bunch of other ones, but everybody feeds to this one. And check us out on uchuntingproperties.com. There's, of course, the podcasts are on there, along with every other week we launch a blog, which has got some great blogs that our agents are putting together, and putting together the documentation and also the field work for it to help you be a better steward for your property and understand different things for your property. So, check us out on, Instagram, Facebook. I'd have to ask the office on how many social media sites.
I'll make sure to get the link to my page.
I'd link to your page.
Right. So, right. Any final thoughts?
Just keep loving the hunt, whether it's a hunt for how to figure out how to buy property, or just the hunt for that whitetail on a piece of private ground or public ground that you've had, been hunting for years, whether it's permission or just open to the public. We're all doing it for the same end goal, to be satisfied, our inner hunting, I don't know what you call them, fantasies or whatever, but we all fantasize about holding that, 200-inch deer every year.
Right.
That's why they call them fantasies. If they happen to everybody every year, they wouldn't be fantasies. It would just be factual. So it's, chase your dreams. It's, and never stop.
All right, man. Thanks for coming on. Well, there you have it, another episode of the Whiteknuckle Podcast. We hope you enjoyed the show and hope you picked up a few nuggets of information along the way that you can use down the road. I want to take just a second and thank our partner in this endeavor, and that is UC Hunting Properties. Without them, this couldn't be possible. You guys all know that I work with UC Hunting Properties, and they're actually nationwide. I would encourage you, for any of your property needs, go to www.uchuntingproperties.com. Thanks for listening. Jason out.